why is opening a brand new restaurant in Palo Alto just a terrible business idea?
Oh, it's brutal.
Right. And on a totally different scale, why does a massive company like Google spend literally millions of dollars in PR trying to convince the government that they're actually this weak, highly vulnerable operation?
Well, it really all comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of how progress actually works.
Hmm.
And, I mean, this is a misunderstanding that was largely burned into the global psyche by the spectacular implosion of the dot-com bubble.
Yeah, the dot-com crash. Because we all intuitively believe that competition is the ultimate capitalist virtue, right? Like, competition is always good. But today, we're going to look at the math and the history that prove the exact opposite.
Exactly.
So, welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of source material today, specifically excerpts from Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1.
It's such a dense, counterintuitive book.
It really is. And our mission today is to completely dismantle the conventional wisdom surrounding startups, progress, and competition. We want to extract a totally different blueprint for building the future.
Because the blueprint that's in the text, it challenges that comfortable, incremental way most of us are taught to approach business, and really just life in general.
Right. And to start building that future, we first have to figure out how to even think about it. The source material introduces what is considered kind of the ultimate interview question for finding visionary thinkers.
Oh, this question, yeah.
He asks candidates, what important truth do very few people agree with you on?
Which, I mean, it sounds like a fun, simple icebreaker.
Yeah, like at a dinner party.
Right. But it is intellectually brutal to answer honestly in a high-stakes interview.
Because your instinct is to offer a safe complaint.
Exactly.
Like if you answer, oh, our education system is broken, or politicians are corrupt, those are bad answers.
Yeah, terrible answers, because you're just taking a side in a very familiar, highly populated debate.
Yeah, everybody already agrees with that, or at least half the country does.
Right. A truly brilliant answer to this question has to isolate a consensus and then just completely flip it on its head.
Yeah.
It has to take the form of, most people believe in X, but the actual truth is the opposite.
And what's really fascinating here is how this contrarian question acts as a sort of lens for evaluating human progress itself. Because, most people assume the future is just going to be more of the present.
Just slightly better today.
Yeah, exactly. They view progress as a horizontal motion. Extensive progress. You find something that already works and you just copy it, going from 1 to n.
Which is the standard model for most businesses.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. The 1 to n concept.
Ah.
If we look at the history of manufacturing, taking a single working typewriter and then building a factory to produce 10,000 more of that exact same typewriter, that's horizontal progress.
Right. You are scaling a known quantity.
You're not inventing anything new, you're just making more of it.
And at the macro level, the single word for that horizontal progress is globalization. You're taking a paradigm that works in one place, say, the developed Western world, and you're just making it work everywhere else.
Like copying and pasting an economy.
Exactly. China's economic boom over the last few decades is the prime example of this. They aggressively copied 19th century railroads and 20th century supply chains to catch up to the West.
But then there's the other path, vertical progress, or intensive progress.
Which is much harder.
Because this is going from 0 to 1. This means doing something that literally nobody has ever done before. So back to our typewriter example. Instead of churning out 10,000 more typewriters, you look at a typewriter and you invent the very first digital word processor.
Yes, that is a 0 to 1 leap.
And the defining word for that vertical progress is technology. And the text points out that this doesn't just mean microchips and software. Right?
No, not at all. Any new, fundamentally better way of doing things is technology. It's really the human miracle that allows us to do more with less.
I always kind of feel of it like a video game. Going from 1 to n is like grinding the exact same level over and over again to just accumulate more coins. Like, it works, you get richer, but nothing really changes in the game.
That's a good way to look at it.
But going from 0 to 1 is like hacking the game's code to build a completely new level with totally different physics.
Right, you change the rules.
But I do struggle with one part of this argument, and maybe you can clear this up.
Sure.
If we just lean heavily into globalization, right? If we just spread our current systems of wealth to the rest of the world, won't the whole world just slowly get richer? Why do we desperately need this 0 to 1 technological leap?
Well, it's a completely natural assumption to make. We see it working, so why not just do more of it? But the math points to a very stark reality. Globalization without massive new technological leaps is completely unsustainable.
Unsustainable.
Think about the actual physical resources required to sustain modern life. The source gives a great hypothetical. If China were to double its energy production using the exact same methods we rely on today, they would just double their air pollution.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or if hundreds of millions of households in India begin living exactly the way Americans do, driving the same gas-powered cars,
Right.
eating the same high-resource diet, using today's tools, the result wouldn't be this utopia of global prosperity.
It would be a nightmare.
It would be total environmental devastation.
So just spreading the old ways of creating wealth, it basically just accelerates ruin in a world of scarce resources.
Exactly. That progressive future we watch in sci-fi movies, it isn't an automatic guarantee. I mean, we look at our smartphones when we feel like we're in this hyper-advanced age.
Well, yeah, I have a supercomputer in my pocket.
Right. But the physical reality of our surroundings, how we generate power, how we build structures, how we physically travel, none of that has fundamentally changed since the mid-20th century. We urgently need those 0-to-1 technological miracles just to make the 21st century peaceful and prosperous.
Okay, so if a 0-to-1 leap is literally the only way to save us from stagnation or environmental ruin, why are massive corporations and modern CEOs so terrified to attempt it?
That is the big question.
Why is the business world so obsessed with just playing it safe?
Well, if we trace the psychology back, the text argues that an entire generation of founders and investors was deeply, deeply scarred by what happened at the end of the 1990s.
The dot-com boom.
And bust. The nostalgia we have for the 90s completely misrepresents how anxious that decade actually was.
Yeah, we remember it as this cheerful, optimistic era, neon colors, great sitcoms, and it just happened to end with a crazy internet party.
Right, but that's not true at all. The decade actually started with a painful recession. By 1992 and 1993, there was a profound national malaise in the United States.
Oh, right, because there was intense anxiety about manufacturing jobs vanishing.
Exactly, which fueled Ross Perot's third-party presidential run. And culturally, you had the rise of grunge music, Nirvana, Pearl Jam.
Which was steeped in alienation, not boundless optimism.
Definitely not. And out in Silicon Valley, there was a genuine pervasive panic that Japan was going to permanently win the semiconductor war and just leave America in the dust.
So the foundation of the 90s was actually built on deep economic anxiety.
It really was. And then the internet arrives. In late 1993, the Mosaic web browser is released.
The first visual way to surf the web.
Right. And by late 1994, that evolves into Netscape. And Netscape's growth is just so unprecedented that they take the company public in August 1995. And they do this without having generated a single dime of profit.
Not a cent. And the stock market absolutely loses its mind. Netscape's stock shoots from $28 to $174 a share in just 5 months.
It was crazy.
That was the spark that ignited the boom, right? Yahoo and Amazon follow shortly after.
Yeah, but skeptics are pointing out that none of these companies are actually making money. And by December 1996, you have Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan giving his famous speech.
The irrational exuberance speech.
Yes, warning everyone that the market is unhinged. But Greenspan's warning was actually years premature, because what people forget is the terrifying global economic backdrop that was actively driving investors into this tech mania.
Wait, what else was happening globally that pushed all this money into Silicon Valley?
International markets were collapsing left and right. In 1997, the East Asian financial crises brought several booming economies to their knees.
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
Then in 1998, the Russian ruble crisis hits, and Russia actually defaults on its debt.
A whole country defaults.
Yeah. And the panic was so contagious that a massive U.S. hedge fund called Long-Term Capital Management, LTCM, blew up.
Right, the LTCM bailout.
They were so deeply entangled with every major bank on Wall Street that the U.S. government had to orchestrate a massive bailout just to stop the entire global financial grid from literally freezing.
That is terrifying.
And then in 1999, the launch of the euro was incredibly rocky.
It sounds like the global economy was essentially a sinking ship. And this new, totally unproven internet economy looked like the only functional life raft in the water.
That's a perfect analogy.
No wonder everyone stampeded toward it. They had nowhere else to put their capital.
And that desperation fueled an 18-month gold rush of pure dot-com mania starting in late 1998. You had paper millionaires paying for extravagant dinners with unvested startup shares.
Wait, they were paying for dinner with stock that wasn't even theirs yet?
Yes, it was completely wild. Individuals were trying to run half a dozen companies simultaneously. It was just a peak of utter insanity.
But the text points out that inside that hurricane of insanity, there was also an incredible peak of clarity.
There was.
To understand how to navigate a 0 to 1 leap, we have to look at what happens when a company tries to survive that kind of bubble. Let's look at the PayPal story from late 1999.
Talk about a grandiose mission.
Yeah, they literally wanted to create a new internet currency to replace the US dollar.
Which is about as 0 to 1 as you can get.
Mm.
They initially tried beaming money between Palm Pilots, which was technologically very cool, but practically totally useless.
Right. Journalists literally voted it one of the worst business ideas of 1999.
So they pivoted. They moved to email payments. And the product worked perfectly, but they ran into a classic startup problem. They had 0 customers, and traditional advertising was just far too expensive to acquire them.
So they do something that, to an outsider, sounds like absolute financial suicide. They decide to literally buy their users.
Yeah, they paid new customers $10 just for signing up,
Just for making an account.
and then gave them another $10 for every friend they referred.
That's insane.
Naturally, this resulted in hundreds of thousands of new customers and this massive exponential growth curve.
But exponential growth meant they were burning cash at a terrifying rate.
Yeah.
It's a sane strategy only if you assume that a massive monopolistic user base will eventually lead to huge profitability down the line, through transaction fees.
Exactly.
But they knew the dot-com bubble was going to burst. They could feel the music stopping.
It became a race against the clock. In February 2000, the Wall Street Journal ran a feature praising their viral growth, and the article gave them this unofficial valuation of $500 million.
And here's where bold action saves the company. The very next month, March 2000, PayPal leverages that newspaper article to raise $100 million in real cash.
They needed that war chest.
Yeah, and investors were so frenzied that a South Korean firm wired them $5 million without even negotiating a deal.
Just, please take our money.
Literally. And PayPal closed that $100 million funding round literally weeks before the NASDAQ peaked and the entire market collapsed.
They survived because they had a definitive vision, they acted with extreme boldness, and they capitalized on the mania to secure the resources they needed.
Right.
But when the dust settled and countless tech companies were wiped out, the survivors, the people who would go on to fund and build the next 2 decades of tech, they developed a sort of collective PTSD.
They got scared.
They learned the completely wrong lessons from the crash.
So what does this all mean? What were these wrong lessons? The text outlines 4 dangerous dogmas that the startup world inherited from the ashes of the dot-com bust.
Let's go through them.
Dogma number 1, make incremental advances. The logic here was that anyone claiming they want to change the world is probably a huckster. You should only take small, safe steps.
Right. Keep your head down. And Dogma 2 became the absolute gold standard of Silicon Valley. Stay lean and flexible.
Yeah, you hear that everywhere now.
Planning was suddenly seen as arrogant. You shouldn't know what your business will do. You should just build a minimum viable product, release it, and randomly iterate based on whatever the market tells you.
Wait, let me stop you there. I hear lean and agile praised everywhere, literally in every business book. Adapting to your customer is supposed to be the holy grail of modern business. Are you saying that adapting is actually a bad thing?
Well, it's tempting because it feels safe, right? But think about what lean and flexible really means in practice. It often becomes a convenient excuse for having no long-term vision at all.
Ah, I see.
The contrarian truth here is that a bad plan is better than no plan. You simply cannot achieve a massive 0 to 1 breakthrough by just throwing random features at a wall and hoping you stumble into the future.
That makes total sense. You can't iterate your way from a horse and buggy to a rocket ship.
Exactly.
That requires a master plan. Okay, so moving to Dogma 3, improve on the competition. The post-crash thinking was, don't try to create a brand new market prematurely. Just look at what exists and build a slightly better version.
And finally, Dogma 4. Focus on product, not sales. The prevailing attitude became that advertising is just a relic of the bubble. If you need a sales team, your product simply isn't good enough.
Which is crazy because PayPal literally bought their users.
Exactly. Dogmatically rejecting the crowd's past mistakes is just another form of madness. The business world swung the pendulum entirely to the side of extreme caution.
Overcorrected.
Way overcorrected. But to build something truly valuable, You must risk boldness rather than settling for triviality.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If improving on the competition is a flawed strategy, then what is the right way to build a valuable business?
And this brings us to the biggest contrarian truth of this entire deep dive.
Yes, the truth that competitive markets actually destroy profits.
Which sounds so backwards to us. But to understand this, we have to separate two concepts that are almost always conflated: creating value and capturing value.
Right.
Creating immense value for the world does not mean you will have a successful business. You have to capture a portion of the value you create.
What does the math actually look like on that? Like, how does an industry that creates massive value fare in a highly competitive market?
Take the U.S. airline industry in 2012. Airlines are vital, right?
Obviously, we need them.
They created roughly $160 billion in value that year, serving millions of passengers.
Yeah.
But because they are locked in a brutal price war with each other, they made only 37 cents per passenger in profit on an average airfare of $178.
37 cents per passenger.
That's it. Now compare that to Google in that exact same year. Google brought in $50 billion in revenue, which is less than a third of the total value the airlines created. But Google kept 21% of it as pure profit.
Wow.
Their profit margin was over 100 times higher than the entire airline industry.
So the airlines are out there hauling millions of people across the sky in giant metal tubes, burning jet fuel, and they are making literal pocket change per person, while Google is minting money just answering search queries.
Yes, and that massive disparity highlights the two extremes in economics: perfect competition versus monopoly. Under perfect competition, firms sell identical or highly similar products. No single firm has market power.
Like the airlines.
Right. And if a business starts making good money in that environment, new competitors immediately rush in, increase the supply, drive prices down, and compete those profits entirely away.
But the opposite of perfect competition is a monopoly. And just to clarify, the text isn't talking about illegal bullies playing dirty tricks or corrupt companies living off government licenses.
No, not at all. In this context, a monopoly is simply a company that is so incredibly good at what it does that no other firm can offer a close substitute.
Like Google.
Google went from 0 to 1 in search algorithms in the early 2000s, and they essentially haven't had a real competitor in that space since.
Because a true monopoly owns its market, it can dictate its own prices and capture lasting value.
Exactly.
The irony here is just staggering. Americans fiercely mythologize competition. We treat it like the ultimate capitalist virtue that saves us from inefficiency. But if you look closely at the mechanics, capitalism and competition are actually opposites.
They really are.
Capitalism is premised on the accumulation of capital. But perfect competition is a mechanism that competes all capital away. If you want to create and capture lasting value, building an undifferentiated commodity business is the worst possible path.
It is a profound realization.
Yeah.
But it does beg the question: if monopolies are the only entities that truly capture value and drive society forward, why do we treat them like rare, villainous anomalies? Why does it seem like every business around us is fiercely competitive?
Because everyone is highly incentivized to lie to you. Both sides lie. Let's look at the monopoly lies first. Monopolists lie to protect themselves.
Right.
They know that if they stand up and brag about holding a monopoly, the government will audit them, scrutinize them, and try to break them up. So they bend the truth to make themselves look smaller and weaker. They frame their market as the union of several massive markets.
Let's use Google again. If Google admits it is primarily a search engine, the data shows they own nearly 70% of the market. They are a textbook monopoly. I mean, the word Google is an official verb in the dictionary.
Yeah, literally nobody has ever said, hold on, let me Bing that.
Exactly, nobody. But Google fiercely avoids being regulated as a monopoly. So how do they pitch themselves to regulators? They say, oh, we are just a technology company operating in a highly competitive $964 billion consumer tech space.
They zoom way out.
Or they claim we're an advertising company. And since the global advertising market is nearly $500 billion, Google suddenly looks like they own just a tiny 3.4% fraction of the market.
That is so clever.
They mathematically disguise themselves as a small fish in a massive pond, constantly threatened by sharks.
It is a brilliant PR deflection. But then you have the exact opposite psychological behavior from companies stuck in perfect competition. The non-monopolists tell competitive lies.
Because they're desperate.
Right. Because they are fighting a daily war for survival. They desperately exaggerate their uniqueness. Instead of using the union of markets to look small, they define their market as the intersection of various smaller markets. So they can claim they are the undisputed king of their own unique category.
The fatal temptation for an entrepreneur is to describe your market so narrowly that you dominate it by definition.
We have a great example of this from the text. Imagine you decide to start a restaurant serving British food in Palo Alto.
Okay.
You pitch investors by saying, nobody else is doing this, we will own the entire market. You are framing your business as the intersection of British food and restaurants in Palo Alto.
Right. You are completely ignoring the reality of consumer behavior. The actual market is the Palo Alto restaurant market in general.
Right.
Do the residents of Palo Alto actually want British food above all the other culinary options available to them? Probably not. You spend so much time patting yourself on the back for having a unique recipe that you go completely blind to the massive, brutal competition right down the street.
It happens in Hollywood all the time, too. Like, a screenwriter pitches a movie by saying it's the intersection of Jay-Z, the movie Hackers, and the movie Jaws.
What a combination.
Like, it's a story where a rap star joins elite hackers to catch the great white shark that killed his friend. And the writer says, this has never been done before. And it's like, sure, that specific combination has never been done before, but that absolutely does not mean it's a good idea.
And what's fascinating here is the psychological toll of existing in that competitive denial. Perfect competition forces an incredible grinding ruthlessness. If your Palo Alto restaurant isn't fundamentally better than the 30 other restaurants nearby, you have to squeeze out every tiny efficiency just to keep the doors open.
You pay your staff minimum wage. You have your grandmother working the cash register for free.
There's a truly tragic story that illustrates the dark side of this competition. Bernard Loiseau was a legendary 3-Michelin-star French chef. The competition for these elite dining guide ratings was so all-consuming that he literally told people he would commit suicide if he ever lost a star.
That is immense pressure.
And Michelin actually maintained his rating, but a competing dining guide downgraded his restaurant slightly. The pressure of that hyper-competitive environment was so heavy that he actually did take his own life.
Wow.
Perfect competition isn't just a dry economic theory. It pushes human beings toward extreme ruthlessness or complete despair.
It's a fight for survival.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals why creating a monopoly is not just a financial goal, but almost an ethical imperative for a company.
How so?
Only monopoly profits allow a business to transcend that daily, brute struggle for survival. Because Google isn't worried about being bankrupted by a competitor next Tuesday, they have the latitude to actually care about their employees. They can fund wildly ambitious research projects, and they can actually implement ethics.
Ah.
You cannot live by a corporate motto like "don't be evil" if your margins are so thin that you are desperately fighting just to keep the lights on. Money is either an important thing or it is everything. Monopolists can afford to think about things other than making money. Competitors simply cannot.
It's a complete paradigm shift, and the takeaway here is incredibly clear. To make a lasting dent in the universe, you shouldn't aim to be a slightly better version of something that already exists.
Definitely not.
You shouldn't aim for the brutal, margin-crushing arena of perfect competition. You need to ask yourself the contrarian question. You need to identify the blank space on the map where no one else is looking, and you have to make that leap from 0 to 1.
And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over long after we sign off today. The historical evidence strongly suggests that monopolies drive human progress because their profits grant them the freedom to execute long-term visions. But think about this paradox. If you successfully do the impossible, if you go from 0 to 1 and build a highly profitable monopoly that entirely escapes the daily struggle of competition, how do you prevent your company from eventually becoming the very same stagnant, uninnovative bureaucracy that the next generation of visionaries will have to disrupt?
Now, that is a puzzle worth solving. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the blueprint of the future. The conventional maps you were handed might show you how to safely get to the middle of the pack, but if you want to create something truly unprecedented, you have to be willing to draw your own lines. Keep asking the hard questions, keep searching for that truth nobody agrees with you on, and we will catch you next time.